My name is John Redeker. This is a conversation really about fake news. One of the things that I think about a lot in my professional work is to think about also how everything connects back to being more human. So in part of my world, in part of my work, I'm a part-time social studies teacher, part-time technology coordinator, and I think a lot about how these things can connect to be more human in the sake of being more personal. So we know that the darkness of the internet and of social media and things like that are so crazy right now in people's lives. We have all this, imagine, right? We have a state who says we have to have a new health initiative in our schools. And a lot of that is based on the fact that, kids are struggling with, their emotional needs and the cyberbullying and all those things that are out there. So this dark aspect is out there. I think that we can also use technology to become more human and to understand more about who we are and how we grow together in society. So that's sort of like where my philosophy comes from on this. I also am a social studies teacher, which we know is the forgotten curricular area, right? I know that if you think about elementary schools, social studies is like sort of a blip on a radar for them. It's not really something people, right now in my, I'm from Goshen schools. We're a K, in our K-12 we have 3,000, just under 3,000 students and 4 buildings. And I was at the K-2 building recently and they were talking about how they have a science and social studies block. And I just stared at them. I'm like, you mean you have a science block? There's no real social studies going on in a lot of places. And so we're a society that looks at, we don't think critically, and so we're a society that's believing fake news, that's having these ideas we don't understand what's going on, but we also are media obsessed, right? We have this diet of media that is so heavy. Our eyes are in our phones or on how many screens do we have going on at one time? I used to laugh when I got married, and I've been married about almost 15 years, but my wife and I were like, all right, we're not going to put a TV in the bedroom. That's just the thing. And now what do? I go, hey, honey, I'm going to go to bed and watch some Netflix on my phone. There's a TV in my pocket, right? There's no TV in the bedroom. Who cares? But I'm doing that. So we're so media obsessed with things, it's a little bit nuts sometimes. So I want to talk you through a little bit of fake news and so give you some real tools today. Fake news is huge in the media, but there's nothing new about that, right? There's nothing new historically about fake news. So we'll talk through some of that. Just my little title here, my little introduction. There's going to be some fake news throughout this presentation to try and, you have to guess which one is fake in there. Right? That's like a two truths and a lie situation. So we have this, so my credentials are there. I'm on Twitter. I didn't put that up there, at John Redeker. No, not Jonathan, at John, J-O-N, Redeker. I love Twitter, very active on there. All right, and so there's a couple of things we want to talk about here. There's a lot, I don't know if my career has changed a lot. At one point I was a professional basketball player. And there are some other times in where I was a space explorer. There's some other times when I may have been, hanging out with dictators around the world, blowing things up. Because that's what you do when you hang out with Putin, is you blow things up and walk away from them. And then, there's other times where my political career really skyrocketed and I was able to have some great successes. So when we think about, right, this media, these things I made in instance, right? In instance. We're talking about fake news today, and I'm talking about how I could make these, that's a terrible grainy image, but I did this for students in seconds on my cell phone, right? And put it up there and showed students, sent it right to Google Photos. I used Photoshop Mix on my phone, sent it to Google Photos. It's on my computer showing my students in my government class right away how quickly and easily this is to make. So we can think about what that does for us, but really when we talk about fake news, we're talking about propaganda. And I know that we're adults, we've all gone to college, some of you are probably social studies teachers as well, but when we think about propaganda, that's what we're talking about. All along when it's fake news, or even any media in general, is propaganda, right? A commercial. I could say this right now, and in this moment, I'm terribly upset that I'm being recorded, but I can say, ba-da-ba-ba-ba. No, you're not. It's gross, right? But the things we hear and the things that we are consuming, even if we don't want to, are affecting us, right? We don't want that message to be within us, but you can't avoid those things, right? And so these messages are strong and they're real. Do that to students, and it's really funny to sing a little jingle like that. And I know that my brain, I can sing almost every jingle from every cartoon and commercial that I saw on Saturday morning cartoons growing up. Someone could say 3 words and I'll start finishing the line of one of those songs. Test me later, not here. All right, but anyway, we think about what we're doing here, and everyone has an agenda. Everyone has an agenda, right? So we have to think about that as we talk about this. Some of it is very normal, right? We accept these things. It's overt, right? The agenda of media is overt sometimes. We understand it to be very clear, right? And then, simple things, these icons of our history, of our timeline together. Some change over time, right? And this idea of what this might mean for us. And of course, we have other ones that are even just the words alone might tell us on something. In fact, the words alone in this case, right, does anyone even remember what Hillary's slogan was? Serious question.
It's my turn.
That's a good guess, actually. Anyone want to throw one out there, what they think that... Because, gosh, Make America Great Again was such a catchy slogan. Stuck with people. It resonated with people. Does anyone know what she had a slogan? Stronger together. Good. Yeah, some of you got that. Some of you are like, oh, I thought it was I'm with her. Maybe that was the next one you came up with. No, stronger together. That was like on the side of her bus and stuff, and nobody knew it. Nobody was talking about it. They're like, why is there a FedEx? Whoops. They're like, why is there a FedEx logo up there? Right? The arrow. But anyway, so that's the kind of thing that we have to be aware of. We're thinking about even whether it's words or images or songs, how we're impacted and what we can do about that, right? This is just a quick snapshot of some of those things. The craziest thing here is how the algorithmic world is doing this for us, right? So we are getting sucked into things based on our clickbait and the things that we are addressing. And so when you think about this idea of our information biases or what we're going to see in the future, we can talk about this in context, but I think about how the algorithmic world on the internet is taking place. And obviously we know that on Netflix it says like you might like to watch this next thing, or on Amazon it says shoppers also bought this thing, and we fill our carts up and stuff, and we like it, right? It's like, oh, okay, cool, I know what to watch next, or I want to buy this thing, and that's all good. Where it gets a little weird is this, sometimes it kind of follows you a little further, right? You ever go to a store and you look up on your phone like a product you might buy? I do a lot of research because I don't want to be like wasting my money and stuff. So one time I was at Dick's Sporting Goods and I was buying some running sneakers, and they were like $40. I'm like, listen, like I would tell my children that's a lot of money for sneakers, but for me as like a finished growing adult, like I'm going to buy expensive shoes if it's worth it. So I look them up on my phone and I buy them. For the next 2 weeks, I'm looking at ads of the shoes that are on my feet. I'm like, what gives? I have them on. Stop telling you to buy them. So that was like a simple example. The worst case scenario, though, could get pretty bad. One time I was teaching, I think I was still teaching 8th grade at the time. I teach in the high school level now mostly, but I was teaching 8th grade, and I clicked on a link. I think I was just browsing Facebook or something, and it says, world's most comfortable underwear. And I'm like, who doesn't want that? Right, of course. And then I clicked on it, and I go, price tag, I don't want that. Right, and price tag on some of those internet ads. And for the next 2 weeks, I'm looking at dudes in underwear on my smartboard in front of my class. All my ads whenever I'm browsing. And I'm like, I can appreciate the male form, but this is not appropriate for the beginning of class. So we have this sort of dialogue happening, and it's kind of weird how this stuff follows us. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. So I told you about my world's most comfortable underwear story. That was a cue for me on there. But I don't know if you've seen this before. I'm going to show you a clip of this, but there's an incredible TED Talk out there by Eli Pariser who talks about filter bubbles, and this is his icon from that. So I think I put a citation in there. If not, I'll do it later. But this is how we are building this filter around us. We only allow different doors of content into our worlds. And when we allow one door in, it might close a door to another. So if we're reading HuffPo and we're not reading Fox News or vice versa, right, these doors are only open for a short time. And then we have sort of a pathway. We have almost a funnel of content coming in from those places. So when you look at our information biases, that is really troubling. Here's this is a quote, actually he uses it in there, but I love this. Apparently it's from Mark Zuckerberg. I don't have time on this, but a squirrel dying in front of your house may be more relevant to your interests right now than people dying in Africa. And we all know that that's true. We all know that that's true. We cannot be consumed all day, all the time with the problems of the world. But something interesting happening right now on our front doorstep is really where we're connected. And so can we, if we look at media trying to impact us, whether it's fake news or media messages in general, trying to impact our world, impact our focus and grab our attention, it's very easy to do so. Very easy to do so. All right, here's a little bit of Eli Pariser, and I think this thing is so fancy, this little clicker, I could just walk right there and do this, but I want to try that. Select. No, right click. All right, click. All right, I don't know how to do that. But they didn't give me any training on this, but it's all right, here we go. This is just a little clip.
So when I was growing up in a really rural area in Maine, the internet meant something very different to me. It meant a connection to the world. It meant something that would connect us all together. And I was sure that it was going to be great for democracy and for our society. But there's this kind of shift in how information is flowing online. And it's invisible. And if you don't pay attention to it, it could be a real problem. So I first noticed this in a place that I spend a lot of time, my Facebook page. I'm progressive politically, big surprise, but I've always gone out of my way to meet conservatives. I like hearing what they're thinking about. I like seeing what they link to. I like learning a thing or two. And so I was kind of surprised when I noticed one day that the conservatives had disappeared from my Facebook feed. And what it turned out was going on was that Facebook was looking at which links I clicked on. And it was noticing that actually I was clicking more on my liberal friends' links than on my conservative friends' links. And without consulting me about it, it had edited them out. They disappeared. So Facebook isn't the only place that's doing this kind of invisible algorithmic editing of the web. Google's doing it too. If I search for something and you search for something, even right now, at the very same time, we may get very different search results. Even if you're logged out, one engineer told me, there are 57 signals that Google looks at. Everything from what kind of computer you're on, to what kind of browser you're using, to where you're located, that uses to personally tailor your query results. Think about it for a second. There is no standard Google anymore.
All right. Does anyone know what year he gave this talk? Some of you savvy people might have looked it up already. Oh no, it's still going. All right, I thought I can't click on. It's old, 2011. Right? And so what has changed since then, right? How many election cycles have we gone through, or how many pieces of information have been out there that we're just challenged to digest and to think about? And of course, Facebook's under the gun with some of this, right? They've been in testifying before Congress, which by the way are hilarious. You want to have some entertainment, watch our Congress, who knows nothing about how the internet works, ask people about how the internet works. It's amazing to watch these conversations happening. There was this one incident, this is totally a side note, but there's some senator was asking Mark Zuckerberg about why things were happening on his iPhone. And he's going, I work for Facebook. I don't work for Apple. He's like, but why is this happening on my phone? He's like, cannot associate that there's a difference with those. It's amazing that happened. But 2011. All right, so we have this confirmation bias, and that's going to continue when people see messages in media. This is not just about fake news; it's about all media, right? Whatever we're consuming, we can see that. So we're affecting our confirmation bias. So right now, when you walked in here, your confirmation bias was, "Wow, I'd really like to vote for this guy in 2020." And that's your confirmation bias that I had seen. So again, thinking about these things we want to add and change in our world, but we're accept what we're told, right? Think about our classes. Talk to your students. I sometimes tell my high school kids that teaching is just lying with confidence. I mean, fight me on that one, right? Argue that. Come on. And then you could say, you know what? Don't worry about it. It's on the test. And be like, all right. That's all you have to tell a kid. And they'll be done. They'll accept it like sheep, right? And so how do we fight that? We have to change it. They have to start challenging things. But we don't, right? We accept it to be true. We hear what happens, right? You talk to different, especially the older generations. Younger people tend to be more critical, but you talk to some older generations, and whether it's president from one party, president from another party, it doesn't matter. They'll say, but we have to respect the president. It's the president. right? Whatever this person says is this level of authority and respect, and it's true, and we have to agree with it and support this person. Some people in our country believe that to be true, but there's just this a blind association, and so that's an important thing to consider. We are accepting what we're told. This one is a little bit longer. I may pause it at one point, but I want to play this clip for you because I found this to be valuable. Has anybody seen this? All right, this is an incredible social experiment.
You're about to meet Michael. He lives fast as a self-made millionaire.
You didn't have to dress up. It's all right.
You're going to photograph Michael. He's actually saved somebody's life. Michael is an ex-inmate. He's a commercial fisherman. Michael claims to be the son.
It's easy.
Michael's a former alcoholic. Here's your camera. I would like you to flesh out the essence of who he is.
What would you like, Alex? What would you like the photograph to say about you?
And it being a psychic impact so much on your everyday life.
I can see this is very important.
Like to get to know the person. You've only got 10 minutes, right?
I think you're a guy that's put yourself out there. You're not hiding anything. My plan was to find out about whoever it was to try and get that. And what I learned from him is he's incredibly brave.
It was really intense. With a shirt out. Sorry.
I wanted to see the nature of the person, which then presented a challenge. How do you portray him as sufficient?
That's perfect. He's a self-made millionaire, sort of a little bit intimidating. I wasn't going for a beautiful, nice, perfectly lit portrait.
I just wanted to try and bring out something of who you are. I think that you just treat people like the everyday people, like everybody is. Pleasure. Thank you so much.
I hope I've got that guy's bravery in film.
So it was a very intimidating environment.
I like the empty chair next to it too.
It's really fantastic.
Almost looks like 6 different people. So not everything I told you today was true. I'm not a fisherman. I am not an alcoholic. The GSC hit me hard, but I've never been a millionaire. I've never been in prison. I am a bond, I'd like to say, but the story we talked about, I never did that. I'm not psychic. Could barely spell it.
Before I knew there were different character pieces, I thought, that's really strange. These don't look like portraits of the character I thought they were. You always got your own preconceptions and you've got your ideas.
It pushed me into a position and a space that I wouldn't normally be in.
You have to dig a lot deeper. It needs to be, I think, a lot more creative to work out how you want to play things.
So you can read that. It says a photograph is more than the person in front of the camera. It's who's behind it. And this is actually a Canon ad for camera equipment. All right, but it speaks to me and a lot about our preconceived notions about how we treat people, how we see people, and then what do we do with that media, even whether it's our students, our world. So if we're doing this with a simple task of photographing a person, and it's telling a completely different story for 6 professional photographers, I mean, think about the impact of that. Translate that way down further. If you're a professional media organization, or if you're a person paid for to try to change people's opinions about a political candidate or something like that, right? Or a media consulting company. So those things are really powerful there. That's a Canon ad. You're welcome to use it any time. But so we take a look at this, and it's really an old thing. All right, this is an ad, well, a cartoon from a newspaper about using the term fake news well before fake news, right? Well before our modern context of it. This ad is from 1894. All right, the idea of fake news in newspapers, right? 4 years later, if you remember your U.S. history or global history, we go to war with Spain. The Spanish-American War took place based on what we called yellow journalism, right? The fact of Hearst and Pulitzer, they're in a newspaper company war. Go back and watch Newsies if you need to, but watch the old one with Batman as the main character. so you have this this story here that's unfolding through the years. In fact, it's not even that new. You throw it back to some quotes from our founding fathers, and we have this situation to be known to be true as well. This is a known entity that we can affect people with great scale through our media. All right, so it's 1796 or 69, 1782. This one's crazy. Ben Franklin in 1782 apparently wrote this story about the king, getting all these scalps from people and stuff like that, and the king it's about refreshing the population, scalping all these people, and how he loved this idea, and it got picked up by major news outlets. He published it, and because of his name, it was put out there by major news outlets around the country. All right, so here's what he said: by the press we can speak to the nations, strike while the iron is hot, and continual striking. He's on our $100 bill, right? This guy continues to use the press, impact the people. So how do we become more aware and alert of that? In the modern age, we have the problem. You see news articles like this all the time, that kids and adults cannot figure this out. We can't know what to do, and so we have to struggle doing this. All right, 82% middle schoolers could not distinguish between sponsored content and a real news story on a website. Right? And so what do? Right? This is about actual practice on this. Right? They said that people judge credibility on tweets based on there was a large photo. They liked large photos. I don't know if you saw this, if you heard this commentary, but in 2008 they called the election the Facebook election because of how much money and energy was used in Facebook ads. It was relatively new back then for Facebook advertising and stuff. Do you know what they called the 2016 election? They called it the meme election. Because we were getting our information based on memes. Little picture with a caption, probably sarcastic. So this is our media diet, affecting us. So it's going to be worse and worse until we start to think about this. A couple of things that I talked about. We talked about in the beginning of this. I can give you this resource. This is the reference is there, Teachers Curriculum Institute. I have this on a PDF. I can share if anyone's interested later. But I talk in my government class, my U.S. history class, with 8th graders, 12th graders, whoever I'm working with, about how in history we use tools to do certain things. There was common tools for war propaganda. Now we're not looking at war propaganda a lot anymore, even though it's interesting that every high schooler has been born since 9/11 and they've lived in a nation at war since they were born, and we don't talk about it a lot. But we think about this, and what do we do next? So these are what it was used for historically. Here's the techniques that it was used for historically, and we can see this today. I summarized them here. I have a lot more information to share with you. But we see this in our media all the time. Are we making somebody look evil, like a demon? Are we using emotional appeal, right? Babies or little kids or whatever. Patriotism, right? These things strike at the heart of people, whether it's in advertising or in fake news, in media, whatever it is, these things strike at us. This is an incredible resource to look through and to understand some of these things to bring back to our classrooms, that we can address these questions and look at the goals there as well. All right, when we look at this idea of the 2016 election, this is from BuzzFeed, so do with that what you need to. But total Facebook engagement for top 20 election stories, right? It skyrocketed, fake news, right at the end of the cycle. Right at the end of the cycle as real mainstream news started to decrease, according to BuzzFeed's research there. All right. Top 5 mainstream election stories by Facebook engagement. You can see some of those there about just very odd sort of things out there. But again, this is historical, right? We're talking about an election, so let's throw it back to one probably no one in this room remembers. You'll hate me because this will get stuck in your head. Do you know this ad? It's one of my favorites. $1952. Catchy song. I don't know that Ike, but I like him. Right? That's the message. I like Ike. All right? But we can go a little weird, too. This one was pulled at the time. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's pretty classic. This was pulled from Lyndon Johnson's 1964 campaign. But it's still interesting to think about different tactics people are using. Raise your hand if you know this ad. Anyone seen this? It's not about education. She can't count, we know.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
you think? A little shock value here today? Right? We must love each other or we must die. Vote President Johnson while this girl's being nuked in her eyeball. Right? What is this? Right? But this is what so they did pull this. It was not, they created it and they never aired it because of that reaction that you just had. But again, and today we're so desensitized to this stuff, right? It's like, oh, we see bombs all the time in our media, whatever. But reality is we do change some of that. So, but this is around. This has been around for a long time. And then we change it even more recently with something of... That's all I need that clip for. Alternative facts we use. We start to change perspective and things like that, right? Alternative facts, fake news, like we're accepting that there's these different realities. And we have accepted it our whole lives. It's just coming up more now with our media diet. Twitter is working on this, right? Companies are trying to be aware. People are deleting, fake bots, these things that are computer coded and stuff to try and just spark debate. Happening on Facebook too, right? There's these people going to dig in to some of these experiences. People are getting paid to go and create stories that divide people. But how do we get into that? We're going to get into some real practical things here now. This is a turning point for us to say, what do we do on Tuesday in our classrooms, or what do we do with our schools moving forward as we think about how to help kids be more critically thinking? Sort of a turn on this, give you some history, bring you up through to some practical stuff. All right, so these are great questions, right? Who created it? What's the author's intent? Right? We do this with our ELA sometimes. What's the author's intent? What do they hope to get from you? But when we talk about media, we don't often do that. Your social studies teachers are doing that. But we don't often do that at large in other things. Right? What points of view are represented? What's not represented? Right? I often like to ask this question too. Where is the photographer standing? Right? Right now, if you're sitting far enough away from me, you can put your hands out and pinch my head. If you close one eye, you can pinch my head because my head looks tiny if your fingers are in front of your face, right? It's called forced perspective in photography. I'll tell you what, every year at the beginning of the year, my 11th and 12th graders, I make them do an assignment where they use forced perspective. All right? And they have to take their cameras, their cell phone cameras, Chromebook cameras, whatever it is, and go out and take a picture where something that's big looks small or vice versa. All right? Some amazing work that comes up. And then we start the whole year with that, saying, how does where we stand affect what we see, right? So that's an important concept to think about in perspective and bias. I mentioned empathy in the beginning of my, in my brand of my description here. You always write these proposals out and then you go, I don't know what I'm talking about, but this proposal sounds good. So I pull this back in here, but this is from a book that I read last summer with a school group. This is from the Hacking School Culture series, or Hack Learning series, that's what it's called. But this is called Hacking School Culture, this book. And this is a PDF from inside of it. If you look up Hacking School Culture, a definite recommendation. It's about, the first whole chapter is actually about self-care for teachers. We went into the summer reading that book. It was awesome. We met at a coffee shop in the summer, reading a chapter about self-care and empathy for ourselves first. What a time, for teachers to be reflective and say, wow, let me take the summer to care. And then you finish out the book and you go into the next school year, really redesigning your classroom as an empathetic, compassionate place. Great read. We actually finished that course with an hour of yoga at Wild Soul Studios in Middletown, and then we went to a brewery afterwards. That was our PD. So we had self-care, people, right? Rudy, you could come for the second half. That's totally fine. All right. But so this is important too to think about, right? If we're being empathetic, how can we think about the media that's out there? If we think about, if we go back one even, and think about these questions, not only who is it, right? If we ask this question of who created this message and what's their purpose, sometimes we could sit back and judge that, right? And be like, oh, that's their purpose. But what if we try to understand why they did it? That's what takes us over here. That's what takes us to empathy. Sometimes it's money, Jacqueline said, but is there a real feeling behind this image? Are they getting paid? Sure, perhaps. That's an issue out there. But what if there's an issue that there is actually a real person behind something, perhaps, or a real idea behind something that says, maybe we can understand someone else's perspective. So, and it's not always healthy sometimes, if it's something that's just downright dastardly or evil, like a white supremacist story or something like that. But we can say, okay, this person has this feeling, and we can start to understand some of that with our kids. An organization that I really like, and this is just a takeaway resource for you here today, is Project Look Sharp. Has anyone seen this before, Project Look Sharp? It's out of Ithaca College, which is also my alma mater, so go Bombers. But we have Project Look Sharp has a whole curriculum kit about media literacy. And that's really kind of what we're talking about here with fake news, is how do we understand the media and become more literate about those things. So they have this whole, like, I just put that up there. You can look through it if you, I don't love the size of the screen, but it's, if you can see that, you can read some of that through. But look up Project Look Sharp at Ithaca College. You'll notice, too, they have these curriculum kits from kindergarten through 12th grade. You know, and it doesn't just need to be like a government thing with media. You could have media perception on the climate, right? So if we're talking about climate change and those kind of things. You could bring it into media on all sorts of different topics on Project Look Sharp. They have webinars, they have professional development, they have tons of great stuff. Most of it's free. You do have to create an account to get the content, but it's free in PDF form. The only thing they ask for is if you want to pay for like a printed copy. They can like send you like a bound copy of their materials. But very, very good stuff out there in Project Look Sharp. And this is one of the things that they have as part of their evaluation series, right? So process of media literacy. So we have access. If we start on the left, we start with access to information, and then we're stuck in this circle for a little bit. Until we actually can take action, we're stuck in a cycle where we have inquiry of, okay, what's happening? Are we knowledge of things? Can we evaluate it? Are we creating new things, perhaps? Right? So there's a cycle in here. We go back and forth, either direction on this, and it can take us to action. So is there some type of action plan that we need to do? That's possible with Project Look Sharp's philosophy. All right? There's also a great, I put some links in here, but there's a couple of things to consider. And here's I couldn't put this on a slide, but this is a PDF from their website. And these are questions that they ask when analyzing media messages. So again, the resources are out there, but this is from projectlooksharp.org. So again, you're talking about authorship. Some of these questions I had very simply before, but this is how to go deeper, how to ask deeper questions about some of these things. Is it credible? What are the effects? How do we interpret this? What's the response, the appropriate response that I have? So really important stuff to look at here. Again, all of these resources will be made available to you if you need them for further stuff. You know, we can look at images like this, which I know is a little shock value too, but did you see this one? It circulated about a year ago on the internet. This is Michael Bennett for the Seattle Seahawks. He's, you know, apparently he was, people were outraged that he was burning this flag in the locker room of Seattle Seahawks game. What?
That's so shocked.
That's a great reaction. He said, that's so shocked, like photoshopped, right? So here's the title, an NFL player burned a flag in a locker room, but really, we should be asking a question, is did an NFL player really do this, right? We just say, oh my gosh, this is crazy, and share, post, you know, send out everybody, outrage, 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 but it's really a question here that we need to be asking. So instead of saying, oh my gosh, did you see this? You should say, oh my gosh, did that really happen? And when you look at this picture, it's clearly fake. What's missing? There's no smoke. How do you have fire inside, especially with no smoke? Right? But people don't see that right away. So clearly photoshopped, and what he was doing actually is the real picture. He was just doing like a hype dance. He was getting pumped up in the locker room, and so but they were able to, where his hands were, they were able to put a flag shaft right through that. It's like, what? You got to be kidding me! But that's a true story that was shared all over social media. Of course, you can go to websites like Snopes.com, or I don't know if that's .org, but Snopes and Fact Finder websites and things like that people have out there. And even if it's not conclusive, it's important to show people stuff that's out there. Like, hey, there's a lot of questions here. We don't know the full story, and that's a good place to start. Even if a fact check site or something like that doesn't give the full true story, at least we can start with our kids and saying, look, it's not a known thing. There's a question mark here in this picture, in this story. And so that's something that we could ask there as well. How about a couple of real resources you can take away with you today to take back to your schools or whatever? There's a couple of things out there that are really great that people are starting to create to help combat this stuff. It's not just about my ideas and my pontifications here, but we think about some of these things that are really kind of neat. I'll show you Factitious really quick. This one's pretty simple, but I want to start with a simple thing for you. Here's what you do. You click on you can start easy and build up, but we click on something and you have to tell me if it's real or fake. And so easy round here. Trump distributes marshmallows to wildfire victims. All right, don't laugh too hard in the back here. What are we doing? So you can read it, and then look, you can even show source. So you're teaching students to actually check a source, And then it's called initial reaction news at the bottom. Initial reaction, that's a funny source for that. So we're going to say, what, Rudy? Real or fake? All right, fake. All right, that's right. Okay, good. And then I continue on. Rudy Giuliani says, truth isn't truth. All right, fact. All right, CNN.com source. Let's see, you say fact? Oh, okay. So we'd have to read it and try to look for analysis and think about that. So this is a great game for kids, right? For understanding, do this as a class. You could have people polling, yes, no, what do you think? Those kind of things. And they may not know, right? These people, especially if you're working with younger students, they won't necessarily know who Rudy Giuliani is or whatever, so that might actually be harder for them, too, to know. By the way, wildfire victims and marshmallows, that's pretty funny stuff. All right. So factitious is a nice one there. Another one that's out there, too, is called Checkology. Has anyone seen Checkology? This is great. Librarians are into this right now. But you can look here, and there's a whole activities here about fact and fiction in general. It's not just about news media. They offer a lot of training. They'll offer you, I think they do offer a free pilot program. I don't know if there's a cost involved with this, but I know that we had some premium. It might be one of those freemium things. But we had a freemium trial thing for a while in our school. It was really great. We had some students taking a look at some real important stuff, all right, with Checkology. So I like that one. This one is a great tool too. I know people know EasyBib, and if you are only finding out EasyBib like as an adult, and you realize that how easy it is now for like college students and grad students to cite their work and stuff, it's amazingly frustrating for people. Or if you're a librarian, you might hate EasyBib. I don't know. Some people do. But EasyBib has a brilliant PDF of a citation checker. So here's even just a simple activity if you want to do more of a teacher-centered instruction. It's 11 pages of PDFs of sample websites that they'll tell you what you're looking for. So you're looking for author, you're looking for dates, you're looking for extra citations to follow things up. And you can make your own if it's more relevant for you for your grade level or your content. So here at WebMD, right, they're pointing out all the places that would be a good article, a valid site. All right, so whatever it is. You don't have to start at CNN if you don't want. You can start with whatever it is. There's lots of different things on here that might help you check that out. All right, so that's a great resource as well. I saved it as a PDF. I think it's like a Microsoft 365 PDF PowerPoint actually on their website, but I should save that with you as well. This is an oldie but a goodie. If you haven't seen it before, I just wanted to show you this. A lot of people using this for digital citizenship lessons, like is this real, fake kind of thing. Kids love this one, elementary kids especially, but it looks like a real website, and it's about saving the tree octopus. Right, there's a couple others that are out there. If you ever have heard like Alan November speak, I think he talks about this one sometimes. The one that he used to talk about a lot, they took down. Have you seen MartinLutherKing.org? It was run by a white supremacist group, and it was like a biased anti-Martin Luther King Jr. thing. They took it down. It's not online anymore. So it was run by a major hate group, and it's no longer there. So I lament that because it was a great illustration, but I'm glad that the hate group is down there. But all right. I don't know if you ever have wondered about this. Have you Googled yourself lately? All right, so I have like a professional website that I started to build for like, just branding and stuff. And then like there's this one. It's the same name. It's not me. All right, and it's a terrible site. Like the links don't even work. I'm like judging him for that. I'm like, come on, doppelganger, if you're going to put up a website, make it work. But, this is out there. He's on Twitter, right? And so like I don't know who he is. I should friend him. But it's very interesting to think about that and how easy it could even be to become somebody else. To buy a website. You could buy a Weebly website for, I don't know, $150 so for 2 years. And it would look totally professional. You could put it out there. You could totally put up pictures of somebody and all sorts of information out there. So that would be so easy to do. And so I didn't even buy mine. I'm just using a Google site. He bought JonathanRedeker.com. I'm like, no, that's my name. I want that URL. But he has it, and whatever, I'm cheap, so I use the free one. But you could easily do it, right? And that's something to be a little bit alarmed about, that people could do that out there. And they are doing that in some ways, right? So let's investigate this a little bit. We talked about how to look at like some tools and stuff. How can we actually then create media is the next step, I think. We talk about that scaffolding, whether you want to call it Bloom's or the Sammer model or whatever it might be for your leveled scaffolding of information. If we're going to go from addressing that fake news and media exists to then evaluating and then the next step to be creating, I think that's actually a big get in our classes. So if we build that level up, maybe it's not your grade level appropriate level, but if we think about that, That's really helpful. So we can create some media here, and guess what? It's actually the same PDF from Project Look-Sharp I'm sharing, don't tell, but down at the bottom, they actually had how do we create media, right? What's my bias that I'm trying to get across? And so if we think about this, that's really important too. Can we start to ask our students to create messages to help understand what the reality is of these media messages out in the world? How can we understand like what's actually going on and by creating our own stuff? And that's awesome. And I do some of this in my own classroom, so I'll share some examples with you as well. All right, but who's going to be benefited? Who's going to be harmed, right? How do I make it look credible? These are important things for our students to start talking about, how to actually create the stuff in their own spaces that we give them, all right? Not to be like super like scary about it and stuff, you know, but like as an example activity, how could we do something to make a different message out there? So I don't know if you've seen our website lately, but the budget vote was like really popular. It was a really great thing in my school district. It was incredible on Tuesday. The first news article here, it was just amazing. They really support the work that I do in my district. It's awesome. All right, but easy. All right, and look at this. There's this. You can actually do this in a simple way. I mean, you could go to a website, and kids do this all the time. We had an actual incident like this in our school where somebody changed what the website looked like and then took a picture on Snapchat and sent it around, and it was actually pretty hateful. It was about a teacher, and they called her a Nazi and things like that, and it was sent around social media, and my superintendent's calling me going, hey, somebody hacked the website. I'm like, no, the website looks fine. And then they sent me the picture, and I'm like, oh, here's what they did. They right-clicked. They went into view page source, and they just edited their version of the HTML. It's not the public version, but you could go down here and come in and say budget, right? Find the words, and you can actually edit this right here, and it's what it will look like on your own screen. It's not everyone's screen, but in the age of screenshots and social media and sharing things, you can absolutely make it look real, right? So actually, this website has some protections on it, but since that happened, they started to lock down our website. But you can do that for a lot of websites and just edit what they look like. Now, by the way, here's the tool for this one if you want to show students this. If you click on this link, Creating Fake News, this is a little JavaScript that will break into that for you. So once you follow these steps, that's how I changed my website. Right? You can just make it anything you want. Once you go to a website, and then you can edit that information. It's a simple little thing, a little free JavaScript to think about. So you don't even need to know that there. It's actually, what's funny is that, see, TEDx Goshen is underlined up there like a Word document has a mistake. And like that's not a mistake. It wouldn't show up as a mistake if it was a public website. It would just show up printed, right? Even if it was a spelling error. So that's how you can kind of see some fakeness there, but people wouldn't know that right away, all right? So there's a great story here, and I'm not going to play the video for you, but I did link it for you, that this teen in Macedonia, so all across the Atlantic, is making thousands of dollars making fake news, all right, creating images out there. So whether or not we actually want people to do it in your own class, to experiment, see what this is like, that's your choice, but the fact is people are doing it, and so that's an important thing to understand that's out there. There's a video there. This is a story here, too, on the right, that this girl used Photoshop to convince her family that she was on a 6-week trip to Asia. And she kept posting pictures of like her with this little girl. But it was her sitting on a stool in her dorm room. And she just cropped herself in there. So this is not that far-fetched if you could easily do that. Now, I put an image on the left. I mean, it's kind of weird. Why would you tell your family you're on a trip to Asia? And like, you know, but I guess for an illustration, a social experiment, it's kind of interesting. But this app is one that I like. The Photoshop series is great. You know, Adobe has this massive network of and huge, like bloated programs sometimes on a computer, and also very expensive. But Photoshop Mix is one that I happen to love. All those pictures from the beginning, except the really bad ones, like me and which one? Oh, my presidential campaign when my face is on the screen before. I used to do Photoshop Mix on my phone, cut out background, do other things. Another great website, by the way, if you want to cut out a background, remove.bg. You can upload any picture and it will cut the background out for you. It's amazing. Then you just have like a vector image. So good. Remove.bg. But Photoshop Mix is available on phones of any kind, and it's a free app, as well as Chromebooks. It's a light duty of Photoshop that does almost everything a kid would need to do in a school. In terms of, you know, you may want to do higher level stuff with your art classes and things like that, but as far as your basic skills And it's nice, it translates. So I've got on my phone, it's on my Chromebook if I sign in, free Adobe account. I'm not sure about the licensing on that, whatever, but you can at least do it to try it and show people how that looks. But in ages, there's definitely that concern with privacy and things like that. But Photoshop Mix is so easy to adjust things. I can do it right now and queue it up and show it to you on the screen. But for the sake of time, I'll show you later if you want. All right, so Photoshop Mix is an easy one. There's other ones as well. Can our students start to change perspective of things? This is an oldie, but if you haven't seen it, it's still enjoyable. Could they recut movies? Right? Could they take content and redo something with it? This would be a great assignment in class.
Most people who disappear into the mountains want to be alone.
Nobody wants to be alone. Except you.
Disney's probably mad at me right now, by the way. Right? So a little bit of twisting in the media, real media, all those are clips from the movie. Change the coloring, change the music, totally different movie. One that I actually want to see now. Right? So, but when we think about all of those skills, right, our students can do a lot of this. Now we need the right software and stuff for do some, like video work is a little limiting sometimes, but the reality is to give those examples of bias and changing things is really important. Now, I actually do this assignment with my students after we watch presidential ads, and this is a positive one, but it's cute, so I went from Frozen scaring you to cute. But I have students making video content. I want to show you this one. It's a little old, but it's one of my favorites. We looked at all those presidential ads first. She picked a banana off a tree in Goshen. I mean, who doesn't want to go run in the field with her and vote for her now? Like, I don't know where she's running, but I want to go too. Like, I'm in, And so we talk about this as a positive example. It wasn't negative in this way, but what tools of media are out there, and now can you recreate the same tools and do that in your class? Absolutely, we can do this with other types of media. I just happen to be a government teacher as well. So a couple of things that are out there that are a little crazy is that you may have seen some of this stuff. This is a sample from a free iPhone app. Now, the language isn't great, but this is a free app. And so what you can tell, though, too, is that we know the tech is out there to do some different, serious, maybe even alarming work.
That's right, Paul. Good morning. They say that the camera never lies. The technology is advancing so fast that it can lie. Greater and greater effectiveness. That's the point of this video from Jordan Peele. Our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time. Former President Barack Obama, right? So, for instance, they could have me say things like, I don't know, Killmonger was right. Wrong. You see, I would never say these things, but someone else would. Someone. Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele actually produced this video to warn about the future of fake news.
All right, so now they're taking voices and modulating them and even moving the mouth of somebody digitally in live video. Not just Photoshop, but actually editing video to make the same person sound different. Now, Jordan Peele's voice wasn't the best here, but there are people that are actually taking the voice data from even a president and saying, now moving their mouth around and making it look different. This is actually even worse than like fake news and affecting our opinions, but this could take us to war, like legit. You know, if they're making a president look like he's saying something that's not real, then how do you say it? I saw him say it, right? That's what people will say. And so we have to be really aware of this, and this is not something that we're going to, this tech isn't something we're going to fight in our classrooms, but the awareness and the critical thinking is absolutely something that's there. All right, there's lots of other things that we can do as well. This one's just to make fake social media feeds. It's called Simitator, I guess, but fake social media generators, which are great to try to experiment with your students as well. They don't care about Facebook, so just go straight to Twitter, maybe make an Instagram somehow, but and they know all about Instagrams and their Finstas anyway. So Finsta, anybody need that definition? Fake Instagram, Finsta. They all have them, right? They hide them from their parents. So check if you're a parent. But all right, so blank slide. And then there's lots of games out there. All right, there's a whole bunch out there. Again, I mentioned factitious before. This one's called Bad News. This is like you're a reader of content. There's all these resources that are available to you. I'm not going to show you all of them, but I wanted to load you up today with some resources that you can go and check out a little bit further. That one, by the way, is for ages 14 and up. That's their target audience anyway. But they make you actually be behind the scenes and to be a news distributor. Like you're choosing what to put on your site, on your website or your newspaper, and you're trying to make people engaged. And it tracks you. Like you're posting real news stories and people aren't clicking your links anymore. Then you're posting these fake news stories and people start clicking your links. You make money, right? So that's a kind of a neat game as well. And fake it till you make it is a behind the scenes similar one as well. So you're between, you have to come up with a bias and then start to spread that out there as well. But we have a lot of power, right? These are tools to help understand things. We have a lot of power in our world, and a lot of it, I started this talk out about empathy and understanding and how we can use tech to become more human. So besides just understanding that it's out there, what we want to really think about is how we can make students realize that this interpersonal relationships that we can build are really what's more important. We all know that we have people in our lives that are just keyboard warriors. And you're like, there they go on social media again, blasting out these articles or whatever. I'm guilty of it sometimes as well. But people posting, or arguing in threads, blasting people, strangers they don't know. Sometimes my mom starts yelling at these people that I worked at a summer camp with like 10 years ago. And I'm like, what are you doing, Mom? Like, get out of this conversation. But that's social media and stuff, right? So, but it's easy behind the black mirror of the technology, right? It's easy to be sitting behind the computer and stuff and to have that experience. Or to say, you know what, I'm going to make something in a vacuum. I'm going to go to my green screen studio, or I'm going to go to my Photoshop. I'm going to make something with bias. It gets a lot harder when we sit and have to have a conversation with people, right? That interpersonal relationship is really what's valuable. And so when we can do that in our classes, I think that's really important. When we talk about perspective, I mentioned that in my own classes personally, I have students take pictures and share about perspective, and we say where you're standing affects how you see things. But also what we've experienced affects how we see things, right? So I do a little survey at the beginning of each school year, and you could mold that from K through 12. My survey asks questions like, and I have them add one or subtract one if it's a positive or negative. I'll say, do you live in a family with two parents, right? And I'll say add one. They do a little addition or calculate or whatever. And then, have you ever had to help pay the bills? I'm working with high school kids. Have you ever had to pay the bills? -1, right? So your benefits, your experiences. Do you have the same holidays off? Are your religious holidays off from school? Think about that. That in the month of Ramadan, a fasting holiday, kids are taking AP exams and they're fasting all day. We're not being, we're not culturally responsive to that. But we do those inventories and we talk about them. We don't make it public. We actually make it anonymous. And I asked about 25 questions like that for students this year. And in one class, so just 1+, 1- for about 25 questions. We had a kid who was a 10, +10, right? A lot of pluses. And then we had a girl who was a -2, right? So 12 points difference. And it's just simple statements like that. And so then if we go into a class together and we say, hey, we need to now talk about things. What do you think about this topic? I know that there's people in this room that are coming from different points of view. And that starts to bring us together in a collective understanding. And we can look through the filter bias, the filter bubbles that we're in, and say, look, we understand that you're in a different filter. Let's work on that. So I'm going to be wrapping up soon, but here's another one. I'm showing you some commercials today. I'm not endorsing these things, but if you want to meet me after for this one, that'd be all right. But I don't know if you've seen this, but this one is a good one to sort of as a walkaway message here too.
I would describe my political views as the new right.
I'll say that again.
Feminism today is mandating.
I would describe myself as a feminist, 100%.
I don't believe that climate change exists. We're not taking enough action on climate change. I think it's about time these people got off the high horse and start looking at the credible problems that actually exist.
It's absolutely critical that trans people have their own voice.
That's not right. You can't, you're a man, you're a man, or you're a female, be a female.
Women do need to remember that we need you to have our children.
Could I put this on to the women's faces in the highway?
Right, okay, well I'm an expert at flat packs. If you've any trouble, just watch me.
So it's that I've got your instructions here.
I think so. Let me up here. There's just nothing there.
Describe what it is like to be in 5 adjectives.
Okay. Frustrating.
Dedicated.
Opinionated.
Lucky.
Ambitious. Offensive. Solemn. I have ups and downs.
Strong.
I want to say attacked. Misunderstood.
Name 3 things you and I have in common.
We're both male, we're both confident, and we're both loudly spoken.
We know each other better than people who know each other for 10 minutes should. You seem quite ambitious and positive, and you got this really got a glow. Your aura's pretty cool. I'm sensing, are you former military or something?
People said that, but there is no history.
So are you
Ex-military?
Yeah.
If you're ex-military, I'm very proud of you already.
Oh,
I grew up in a bit of a rough state. I've experienced homelessness. I know what it's like to have absolutely nothing.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm definitely most grateful just for life.
We've only just met, but I think you're the sort of person that would listen to me and we'd have a discussion rather than argue. Yeah, you could hang out with man.
Let's go.
Okay. Yeah, you're right, mate.
It's a little walk.
Perfect.
Oh yeah. Basically, that's how we can put a bar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here, each take a bottle and place it on its corresponding markings on the bar.
Attention, please now stand to watch a short film.
Feminism today is definitely an excuse for misandry, mandating.
If somebody said to me that climate change is destroying the world, then I'd say that is totally piffle.
So transgender, it is very odd. We're not set up to understand or see things like that.
I am a daughter, a wife. I am transgender.
I feel like the battle for feminism definitely isn't done. The fight is never going to be over, if I'm honest with you.
You now have a choice. You may go, or you can stay and discuss your differences over a beer.
I'm only joking.
I'm having a drink.
I would discuss.
Beer.
Yeah, beer discuss.
Cheers. At the end of the day, I'm reaching out to people, yeah, and even if you wanted to convince people about your point, the productive thing to do would be to sit down.
Engage.
I've been brought up in a way where everything's black and white, but life isn't black and white.
Yeah, I'm just being.
Yes, smash the patriarchy. I'll give you my mobile number, you give me yours, and we'll be in touch. I'll have to tell my girlfriend that I'll be texting another girl.
Like that one, right? So let's go have a beer. Well, and the truth is, right, this is about life. And obviously there's actors and how I hired these people or whatever, but I love it. And so the shock in the room when the guy walks away out of that, he walks off the frame in the video, like, it was awesome. And you guys are like, oh, thank God he came back. So, but here's the thing, right? Are we creating authentic experiences for our kids that can actually have that? We're not going to have them building IKEA furniture or having a beer, but are they doing stuff that they can actually, and having guided conversation to actually build empathy in our own little circles, our own little classrooms? to then start to understand there are so many people out there that are going to be different from me, have a different perspective, and that's okay. I can still work next to this person, have a beer with them, and hang out. You know, this is especially relevant in my experience with the way men interact, and I'm not going to get too much into like a gendered thing there, but you know, oftentimes like my wife can go and sit down and have a cup of tea or a glass of wine with some friends, and they just talk, and I'm like, I got to go do something. Like, give me like, let's go hiking, like an activity, right? Or like, let's go paint some rooms in a house somewhere. Like, we'll really have a good conversation. One of my favorite times with guys recently was like, we put windows in someone's house. We spent the whole day just like replacing the windows. Like, we had the best conversations, right, about life and whatever. Like, we don't sit and talk, do that, but we did that day because we're doing an activity together. So can we create activities in our classes that are actually meaningful for our students to build that in? It's possible that they can sit and talk, but we might need to have an activity like building something or like, you know, some sort of social event for kids to think about. This is really about living life together, and when we live life together, we can understand the bigger picture. So we can understand that the media is out there and these messages are coming, but if we can think about ourselves together as this diverse group of people trying to move forward and grow in maybe different ways, but trying to move forward and grow, I think that we can start to change our own little worlds of our classrooms or our school districts or our buildings, and then that can have a ripple effect into the larger society. Right? We have a nation who's believing fake news. We have people who don't stop to ask questions, but a lot of that starts with relationship. And so I think that's where I wanted to end this today. I want to land it there, and I want to thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody.